Thanks, Sarah, and hello, everybody. As Sarah mentioned, Ansgar, my name. I'm with the Eclipse Foundation since the middle of this year, past 20 years within the Bosch universe, all the time software, mostly all of the time automotive. And I've been part of the initiation of the Eclipse SDV working group in the early 2022. And that's also my role at the Eclipse Foundation. I'm looking after the entire automotive ecosystem we're having. Today, as mentioned by Sarah, I'm going to talk about the SDV Alliance, which already Martin was announcing a little bit, is somehow the alliance of alliances, but to that later. So it's going to be some kind of 10 minutes. I give you a short wrap-up of what the SDV Alliance is, what it's not, what it's doing, what it's maybe not doing. And then this is going to lead into a panel discussion with 4 panelists I'll introduce later on, where we can also deal with all of your questions. So what is the, or maybe 2 slides on things which are most likely aware to many of you if you are in automotive, but why do we talk this SDV thing and what is SDV anyways? So I usually explain software-defined vehicle in a way that that's all the software which you usually as a driver of a car don't experience at all. So it's the software which enables you to experience new features in cars. I think that is pretty much a repetition of what we heard in the panel discussion before. It's a paradigm shift in how we develop cars. So it's from hardware-centric to software-centric. It's from introduction new features over the life cycle of a car. It's software-driven platforms and platform approaches which also carry on from one to another vehicle generation and not build software stacks each time from the scratch for each new vehicle. Tracking and correction of bugs, extending the life cycle of the vehicle by these new features, alignment with digital world of the vehicle occupants, and so on and so on. There's an Gartner research and Aurora Labs research talking about that in 2023, 50% of the top-tier automakers will offer new features through software updates. Sometimes this sounds already a little weird. Why is that still a thing for the industry? So mobile phones are doing that for years. There's this research that also respondees to that questions would be willing to pay up to $20 per month for additional services after buying a car. So seems like there is a market demand for that. But on the other hand side, and I think Rolf had a nice overview on its on that slide beforehand. Good morning. How the maturity of the different vehicle manufacturers is in terms of being capable of delivering these digital values. And we are seeing that there's still room for improvement here and there. So that's pretty much what we are solving in the Eclipse, or which we aim to solve in the Eclipse SDV working group, which other initiatives like SOAFEE, like AUTOSAR, like COVESA are aiming all on different kind of technology levels. How do we enable the developers conveying that what people in the end are willing to pay $20 a month for to the end customers? So we need software to enable us to do these things and not do it in the way we either didn't do it at all or do it in a bad way currently. I think, Martin, you made that point already in your discussion some minutes ago. SDV is bigger than one company can do it. And from my point of view, it's also not about capabilities. There's for sure companies who can do that maybe by themselves. But from my point of view, there's no meaning in doing that by themselves. We heard people talking about non-differentiating software features. So yeah, you can build a stack your own. It's going to be a monolithic stack. It's going to be the stack which is run in one OEM brand in the world. What is the other, I don't know, 49 or 50 brands doing? It's a different stack. We don't have any horizontal integration in it. We don't have common APIs in it. What's the sense in doing that, even though if you're capable of doing that? So that's why SDV is a lot about collaboration, doing that together, building communities like the community we're currently looking at, and to also collaborate on code, not only on specifications. So, what is the SDV Alliance then? Yet another alliance? Yes and no, I'd say. It's pretty much, in my own words, we realize that there is many open initiatives in the world which are trying to solve different technological questions in the means of SDV. And obviously, if you're doing things in open source, it does not make sense to do the same thing in several places. I'm not saying that it's a bad idea to have competing projects. If there is people who believe they can solve problems better than others, let them compete also. But not by definition, we should aim for doing the same thing in different initiatives. And the solution to that, or the aim of the SDV Alliance, is to make sure that this is not by default happening, but we try to be more integrative to see how different initiatives work together. And that's pretty much what the SDV Alliance is about, an alliance between AUTOSAR, COVESA, Eclipse SDV, and SOAFEE to see how do we fit these bricks. Lego bricks was one of the terms used before, together instead of everybody doing the same thing in different initiatives. It was launched at the beginning of this year. There was a demo which was presented at the COVESA reception during the CES in Las Vegas. 2 demos were shown there, which pretty much showed how projects from Eclipse, VSS from COVESA, AUTOSAR implementations, and also SOAFEE technology works together in a demonstrator way. And that's also something where the SDV Alliance is currently working on, also developing that further. We are thereby, as I mentioned, aligning the efforts which we are having in the SDV ecosystem. We try to create a definition of who is doing what, examine the different technologies out of these initiatives and see how they work together. And obviously also build community from that, educate the SDV market, and try to use and make use of the different skills we're having in those initiatives. We do get regular questions on what is the SDV Alliance, what it's not. I try to put a few of them on the slide, and we can talk about everything what is left over afterwards, for sure. So the SDV Alliance, first of all, is no any legal entity. So there is no SDV Alliance, GmbH, public limited, whatsoever. And it's also not supposed to be one. So it's really an umbrella over this 4 different initiatives, which has their communities and their legal entities beyond them. And thereby also the SDV Alliance is nothing which members can join. So I cannot join the SDV Alliance if I like to. What I can do is I can join SOAFEE, COVESA, Eclipse, AUTOSAR to drive things from these organizations, also in the collaboration in the SDV Alliance. Written there, any member of the SDV Alliance can collaborate in the work streams we are having. What is also an important thing is that we all agree, due to legal questions, regulatory questions, that we will not produce any IP under the umbrella of the SDV Alliance. Again, there's no legal entity behind the SDV Alliance, but we generate that IP in the different initiatives we already have, so one of the 4, and then work together in the SDV Alliance. And when possible, the results from the SDV Alliance will be published in a joint and open GitHub instance. So in one of these 4 initiatives or in more than one of these initiatives. Yeah, as you see, or as I already announced, the SDV Alliance consists of these 4 different member organizations, where AUTOSAR is the, let's say, most mature organization doing that standardizing on base software thing for some years now. COVESA also is, I don't even know if AUTOSAR exists longer than COVESA. Anyone in the room knows that? With the GenEV organization beforehand? I'm not sure who is the older one then. Nevertheless, COVESA being there, especially working on the abstraction of the signals. Eclipse SDV, the community within the Eclipse Foundation, and SOAFEE, the initiative mainly driven by ARM. And that's the 4 organizations being part of the SDV Alliance. As mentioned, there is already initial demonstrators and POCs, which has been shown at the CES at the beginning of this year. And also the SDV Alliance currently is working in different working streams now. We have 4 of them. One is vision, the other one is marketing, the other one is demonstrator, the other one is legal. If you want to learn about super interesting legal stuff, you should talk to Michael, who's, I don't know how many times of your last year was on legal questions, but obviously you can figure out that if these 4 organizations work together, there's a lot of questions, how does that work, legal-wise, IP-wise, etc. So that's a work stream where we are working on how do we enable us to work together. Demonstrator speaks for itself, so we are working on driving technology, taking code which is in the different communities and put that together. Vision and marketing more on what is the strategy and the alignment of this alliance, and obviously also how do we market that. That's what you can then also experience from the SDV Alliance. All right, how can you involve yourself? As I already mentioned beforehand, be a member of minimum one of these organizations to be able to engage in the SDV Alliance. If you would like to engage, we would also like to ask you to be at least active in one of these 4 streams. I presented the slide before, sorry. And how to get connected to one of these members, talk to one of these gentlemen on the slide representing the different organizations. Or to any of the projects you're realizing and learning maybe today, tomorrow, and the day after, you see and probably you feel like is worth engaging in. And then you can become active in the SDV Alliance. Having that said, that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about the SDV Alliance. And to not be forced to answer all of your questions by myself, I would like to get my panelists on stage to have some backup for the questions. Please welcome Michael, Niklas Höret, Gerald Reitz, Martin Schleicher, and Bernhard Rill. To give you an impression, all of them obviously work for companies. Bernhard for Arm, Gerald for Bosch, Martin and Niklas, Michael, sorry, are the continental fraction here, but today they are on stage for the different organizations I've been talking about. Bernhard is representing SOAFEE here, Gerald COVESA, he's also one of the board members of the COVESA initiative. Martin is here to represent the Eclipse SDV working group, and Michael for AUTOSAR. Please give him a warm welcome, them. And now I wonder if from the presentation you have already some questions you would like to give us to discuss about. Otherwise, I would have prepared some.
There is one.
There's one already.
So not to Michael, because he doesn't have a microphone.
Or you need to be fast. Or I have to be loud.
Okay, thank you. I was wondering, there is also this software-defined car alliance, the SOFD, which is partially sponsored, or which is sponsored by the Federal Ministry of Business Affairs. Are you talking to these people as well? Just wondering, it'd be perhaps nice to include them also.
I take this. I mean, the SOFD car is already more or less finished. Yeah. There is the final presentation. In Stuttgart. So we, through the member companies, for example, at least Mercedes, Bosch, ZF, I'm aware, have been actively Eclipse, Federate, Alpha SDV. We can take a look into if we can leverage that work. I think that maybe if some of the SOFD car work will be included in COVESA.
Yeah, so in general, we have this of public-funded projects, like the Federate projects we have, which are starting now. That's just the horizontal alignment there, and I think all the activities will hopefully bring contributions to the alliance. That's, for example, the intention of the Federate projects. that out of these funded projects we have contributions, and the target areas are then the alliances here on the stage, where then the results are hosted publicly in open source projects.
Okay, good. Thanks very much.
Any other questions we have from the audience on the overall topic of the SDV Alliance? At the very back.
Hello, so I'm Ahmed from Vitesco, and I have a small question. How binding is the alliance would have, or how much control would it have on the requirement, for example, and the vision for, say, the AUTOSAR or COVESA or SOAFEE timeline and the plans?
That is a very interesting question. So first of all, the SDV Alliance is really about exchange. So in the past, all of these industry consortia were focusing on their own topic, yeah, because of also own expertise gathering in different consortia. But with the SDV, it's more and more important that this expertise comes together and makes a holistic approach towards what we have to do in the vehicle. So the target will be that we are aligning very loosely, so there's no intention to force like a delivery schedule driven by the SDV Alliance. But on the other hand, first result is that there are a lot of bilateral communication, bilateral projects together. So for example, last week we showed at the ELIF collaboration between AUTOSAR and SOAFEE. Then we have collaboration between AUTOSAR and COVESA. With Eclipse, we are talking about how to solve certain licensing issues in the future with AUTOSAR-based IP. So alone the existence of this SDV Alliance, even if it will not bring maybe the pure building block tangible asset in the future, is that it will align the industry, and we try to make sure that where we have interfaces, these interfaces are as compatible as possible. And this, of course, is no mandate, no plan to run a synchronized schedule with committed release dates, but really the commitment is talk to each other, align with each other, make sure that things are as compatible as possible between the different consortia.
I would like to add something here. Also, many companies are member in several of these initiatives. Yeah, we are also in several, and there are different representatives. And that SDV Alliance also helped that we have internal alignment in our companies. So we have consistent statements to AUTOSAR or to Eclipse, for example, so that that's more clarity also inside the companies how we can leverage and contribute to these various initiatives.
And one additional statement from my side. At the end, you've seen, as Ansgar has outlined, that the SDV Alliance, though now public and formalized, it's not an instance by itself, so it's not that it's related towards some dedicated funding. So all the cooperation talks that we'll have are really based on the motivation of the members itself, that there is an overlap and that they'll find an industry solution how topics can be solved. So, and this is clearly something which luckily I had as well a chance to participate in the Federate and Half-Hour SDV workshops in Vienna 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. That would be, from my perspective, one of the USPs that Federate, for example, especially can bring in towards this game, to look where there are really overlaps, where there are still enhancement needed, and coordinate. Coordinate would be too much, but at least help a bit to guide how these individual initiatives can further work together.
So if I understood that properly, it's more like the SDV Alliance is not having any governance on the 4 organizations, so it's not telling the organizations what to do. It's more we try to not make the alignment coincidentally, but more in an organized kind of way. Does it summarize that?
Yes.
I would agree to that. I mean, as everyone is luckily to a certain extent aware of the organizations, they'll have their own vision and drive where they like to go to at the end. The interesting aspect is to constantly align where is the overlap and what potentially one organization initiatives is covering, so that you don't need to focus upon.
Mm-hmm. Is that question answered by that? Looks like it, thanks. Haben wir noch ein Mikrofon? Hier vorne ist noch eine Frage. Sarah?
Michael, Paul Weber, eine Frage.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I'm asking on behalf of Federate now, because as you said, we're trying to find out where something missing. What I would like to ask the SDV Alliance, the 4 different alliances or organizations in there, that from my point of view, we have solved quite well with COVESA this functional abstraction towards the vehicle. And as we have seen in the morning presentation from Dirk, there are a lot of new functions coming out, which will gradually be spread out via over-the-air updates and so on. But a lot of these functions have also functionality from the cloud. Is there any of the organization working in a way that we abstract it towards the cloud too? Because there you have, for example, to abstract it towards energy providers, towards road operators, towards garage operators, and so on. So yeah. Is it SOAFEE or who is?
Yeah. So as part of the SDV Alliance, the COVESA is concentrating on the vehicle abstraction. So we are defining the semantic model of the vehicle, and the main intention is that this is unique, means you can use it in the car or in the cloud. So of course you maybe use different software technology to access the data, but the meaning of the signals should be identical if you use it in the car or in the cloud. And I'm not sure if
not exactly what I meant. So what I meant is in the car you have now a function to open a window on the left hand side, or to close the door, or to check if something is done.
Yeah.
For example, an application can be this park and pay, which I have in my car, that you want to start now, that you're in a garage and you want to pay and you stop paying. And I would like that it works in Spain, in Israel, in America, and so on. And there, I guess, in similar abstraction would be needed for paying in a park garage or paying a toll and so on.
So my first answer towards this, Paul, is and would be that Catena X is defining that on a European level, how a joint data space looks alike. Though at the end, when it comes back towards the overall enablement from a technical perspective, that's one of the focus area of SOAFEE in this context, that you'll use the architecture which is available in the cloud and map it towards the car, so that due to this, you'll have a logical extension of the cloud in the car, or vice versa at the end. We all know that there are shortcomings, and that at the end, in order to map this towards a car, enhancement is needed. That's something which SOAFEE, together with the other initiatives, is focusing upon. But those two building blocks, from my perspective, represent the answer towards your question.
So the scope of Eclipse SDV allows that. Eclipse, by purpose, has 3 areas. One is the in-vehicle software and not the function, but also then the cloud part, linking the vehicle to the cloud exactly for use cases that you have in mind, plus the tooling. So from that, Eclipse SDV would be a place to go there. And if somebody has a great project proposal, we're happy to talk about it from that point of view.
Isn't it wonderful when people answer me? But yes, and in addition, you heard today the talk by Carton about open telemetry. That would be something that goes in the direction of cloud. We also have a blueprint around fleet management that exactly does that. And the insurance blueprint also creates a connection between vehicle and, in this case, the telemetry, and then again the cloud. So, yeah.
Yes. There is next question.
I may want to ask a painful question. So
Painful?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry for it. When I'm a student, I want to build a little small self-driving car. The first thing I do is go to ROS2 because it's fun to use and sexy. And I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I think AUTOSAR is not as much fun as ROS2, for instance. And here the thing is, you said it should be fun to use, it should be sexy, and in the end, with that, when it's, let's say, 1 a.m. in the morning, I still try to work on this because it enjoys me so much, for instance, and also I bring innovation into it. And here, just let's say from an open source contributor point of view, which wants to create, let's say, a startup with a robot, self-driving car, whatever, in the end, which would be exactly in this realm here, I I have no idea how to, let's say, really engage here. And the thing is, ROS 2 enables me to do this, provides the drivers and so on. So my thing here is, or my thinking is, wouldn't it be nice to somehow get ROS 2 here on board? Because it already provides a good community with tools, with drivers and so on, and has also a lot of toy projects which you can also here utilize here for a demo, for instance, and say, okay, we have the Turtlebot, we do not build it with ROS 2 API, we build it with AUTOSAR API, for instance. Did you think of this? Or what is your take on this?
Yeah, also a lot of us are doing demonstrators with ROS 2, yeah? Building small vehicles running around. So that's, of course, not out of scope. The question is, in the end, how can you deploy it in the car? So someone has to grant you a car where you sit in, and which works in a dark night when it's snowing in the icy road, and the brakes are working. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I know what you mean, certification in the end, but here in the end, there are also, let's say, companies addressing exactly like this, how to make ROS 2 certifiable, EZLD, for instance, and there are multiple approaches, for instance, and if you have a lower ARM-W layer, which is certifiable, have a smooth migration path, for instance, or certify the whole stack, for instance, well, therefore, with these methods, you could ensure this, that a ROS 2 stack is certifiable and can safely be deployed on the road, as same as like an AUTOSAR stack. There are tremendous challenges here, and they are not completely solved, but people are trying to do this.
But there is actually a solution out there for a certified ROS 2 version from a company, Apex AI. So it's there, and I'm fully with you. What ROS perfectly shows the way how you nowadays develop software. Developers go out to the internet, download some software, take a piece of hardware and start building it. If you are not able to provide that going forward, you really will lose. And this is what we should look at as a role model, what we can learn from them, or we invite them also from an organizational point of view, definitely open to that, and we're looking to them and we're talking to them. I also know Jan Becker personally and a lot of others as well. So it's not like that we don't want to talk to and we don't want to learn to. Also with you, and that's the situation that we have. We want to do it software like you do it in software, but we have the software running in cars and it's safety, and we need to satisfy the automotive requirements at the same time. And this is, we have to serve both topics, and that's not trivial. Yeah? If you want to do the one thing, you sacrifice a little bit the other. Yeah? And we need to find the right compromise and the right approach there. And I think Michael wants to talk about AUTOSAR and how it opens up for the future.
So I'm very much aware about that feedback. We have received it several times from different angles, and I also understand why. Yeah. So also from the AUTOSAR perspective, I would say what is often looked at from AUTOSAR side is the usability. Yes, so there are some challenges, but it's always because you have bigger system of systems with a vehicle being described entirely in AUTOSAR, which makes it a little bit more complicated than having a very specific application use case which can be solved quickly. So therefore, I think ROS is very prominent to solve things very fast and very nice. But having worked in safety myself, it's not so sexy, but it's still necessary, as Gerald said. And there are a lot of functions that are underestimated when you look at frameworks like AUTOSAR Adaptive that you have to do anyways, like this DTC stuff. So this, how do you diagnose things in the workshop, right? So you need to have, if you don't have this in your framework, you have to add this in the user space. So if you're doing a Linux-based or a ROS-based implementation, that's not usually not coming by those frameworks. And that's basically what's the benefit of a standard like AUTOSAR, to have every typical automotive unsexy function also being taken care about. And with that, there might be a little bit the loss of the sexiness of having the access to certain services and signals. To ask the openness of SDV Alliance, and if also others can join, I mean, we are at the moment in the phase of drafting an MOU. So when this will be finished with the initial organizations, also other organizations can join the SDV Alliance. So it's not like a closed club of the four. and it's not intended to be that, because the intention is really to bring the industry forwards. As you mentioned, there are a lot of benefits with ROS, but there are also a lot of benefits with the organization that are on the stage. And we need to harvest the benefits from all of those. And AUTOSAR has 370 companies being member, and if we want to change something in AUTOSAR, we can. It's actually a member thing, right? Let's do it, let's change it, and move forward to make it more sexy.
And I like to add one different aspect compared to what Michael said. You indicated that in your leisure time at 1 o'clock in the night or something like that, you'll like to build an ADAS stack or something like that. I like to highlight in this context that if you go to SOAFEE.io, the homepage, it's as well a link towards our GitHub repository, and there you have a full open source cloud native ADAS stack, which is using OpenID Kit. And at the end, there are loads of references as well to COVESA and other APIs which are reflected, especially in VSS, where Cyclone is being used at the data distribution service. And that's a starting point. It's fully open source. And now, for us, at least from a SOAFEE perspective, working together again with this organization, it's how to harden such kind of a stack, how to replace individual building blocks in order to make it serious production ready. And that's, of course, then the industry effort which needs to be done.
Just sorry for intervening. So I'm one of the maintainers of the Eclipse IceWorks project, which is part of Apex AI and Apex IDA, for instance. And we had there mastered the challenge of having an open source project and certifying an ASLD, and we succeeded with the base library, and now continuing with the next version in our IceWorks 2. So therefore, it's viable, and we can do this. So therefore, yeah.
Yeah, I can spoiler here. There's another project being onboarded in Eclipse, the NDS Serial, which is a map service running in the vehicle, and it's open source. It's coming from a consortium, it's open source, and it's ASLB safety certified, and it's in serious production. So you can do it, yeah, you can do it. If you follow best practices from open source. I mean, open source doesn't mean that you don't follow any processes. Successful open source projects have very good tooling and very rigid processes. We need to make sure still that we satisfy the safety certifiers from ISO 26262. And not all of them have a background in modern software development. But it's doable, yeah.
So maybe to summarize that up, from what I learned from the discussion is that there seems to be sexy stuff outside, which Christian is using by 1 o'clock in the morning when he hacks his ADAS car. There's maybe supposed to be unsexy thing, which is solving important questions like functional safety, etc. already. And there's an openness within the organizations to also connect these different worlds and try to make it sexy so that Christian in the end doesn't need to work by 1 o'clock in the morning if he produce serious cars in the end, right? Is that question somehow answered by that, Christian? Lovely. Do we have other questions from the audience? Dirk has one.
I would have one. I mean, you were talking about openness early on, but it's, one question I had when I was looking at this, it looks very US/EU centric. Are you specifically looking at onboarding anybody from China? Like, I don't know, what's coming out of CAAM or something like that?
So, as I mentioned in my presentation, the SDV Alliance is not onboarding any members. So that is a question which goes to 4 different organizations. Who would like to take it from that perspective?
I mean, that's the main part of the answer, yeah? So individual companies have to join the alliance, the organizations. And I think, I talk for COVESA, there's no limit in someone else, and we have a clear strategy to broaden the Asian participation, so including China, of course. But
I mean, we could take that with us. I mean, we have a regular alignment and can talk about it. So thanks for the inspiration.
Regarding
the topic of international collaboration.
Maybe if that is a different question? I would like to comment on Dirk's one, even though if I'm supposed to be the moderator here, I feel so much triggered because that's pretty much the work I'm doing. Talking for the Eclipse SDV working group, yes, it is very European, US based as of today. We do have intense discussion with Asian OEMs and also other OEMs in Europe and then the US. From my point of view, to make this a success overall, and this is, I think, true for all of the organizations, please step in if I say too much here, it will help us the most the more organizations join that, right? So I've been arguing about what's the sense in developing a software stack which is non-differentiation. The most value out of that you get if many adopters are there, so that means from my point of view, it should be any OEM on the planet joining those initiatives, but on the other hand side, there's maybe different levels of urgency for them also to do that. But yes, from my point of view, that's not limited to a European, US kind of initiative, but should be a worldwide one.
Thanks for sharing, that's encouraging.
Can I maybe come back with a question? So looking at the various associations, I think we have fairly good share of members coming from Asia already in AUTOSAR, in Eclipse, maybe it's a little bit less, but it's not about the companies being members, it's also about the individuals and the companies contributing actively. And I would maybe ask them the question, what can we do to have them more actively contributing? Not everybody is, at least from my experience, really actively contributing to those associations. And this is where we are living from the contributions of the various individuals and companies. So I don't know if you have any idea or best practices, or somebody else has ideas or best practices here.
No, please.
I just wanted to destroy the enthusiasm.
Yes,
last week.
I love it.
Yes. So last week, I was reading a report that there is a proposal in US for a new regulation that is about connected vehicles that would potentially exclude Chinese suppliers from the supply chain. And that would force OEMs to decide whether to go left or right, because basically if you want to bring products in the US market, you have to decide what suppliers you are using. Do you know about that and how this has an impact? I think it's called ICPT, if I'm not wrong.
We know about that. Also, Rolf knows about that, and it's a thing that the Biden administration has started, and they want to have a proposal for a law still in November. Yeah, it's very short. And it's not just China, it's also Russian, banning Russian and Chinese software and hardware being used in vehicles sold into the US. Open source is explicitly mentioned and exempted. So open source is not part of that. So from Eclipse point of view, we are fine. And now leaving to the others.
So from my point of view, it's even a catalyst for open source adoption.
Exactly. Yes.
Rolf had a question as well.
I think just one comment. We see similar trends in the telecom industry. I think they go for open run, open source in order to have that insight into the supply chain. But I had a question because like we have the different initiatives. What do you think about the recent development on robotaxis, particularly in the US? You know, first trials from Waymo in San Francisco, which definitely operating in a very complex structural environment. On the one hand, it's highly safety critical. So it's stretching the limits of autonomy, and they're claiming to have a modular approach. Do you have any contacts or any companies working, or any initiatives working on that use case?
Oh, that's...
Yeah. Yeah, the short answer is not from COVESA side and probably not from the others. You see the direction, nobody wants to take it. So it's not a really clear cooperation.
Because you're talking about a function, and here we are talking about non-differentiating common parts. Yeah? So we're a little bit away from the functions. But.
Exactly. So most of the bigger taxi companies, of course, work on their own since they can scale and are have deep pockets in this context. But well, I can comment that at least from our perspective, we speak to them. So that's clear.
And this is also important that we're doing the non-differentiating stuff, right? So for us, some collaboration like the SDV Alliance is also a chance for the classical automotive industry to join forces, yeah, to have also more resources to gain certain momentum, like also bigger scale companies in the mobility ecosystem already having. So it's also a chance for us as the automotive industry to do something together, otherwise somebody else will do it for us. So we won't have our technologies driven by the automotive industry, but maybe a big tech company will force it on top of us. So this is a chance to collaborate on topics like Federate, on SDV Alliance, on Half SDV, on the different consortia. So if we're not doing that, then we will be dead, and others will give the source code to us and force it on us and give us the pace how to develop software. So this is a really critical time in automotive. It's really important that we work therefore together.
And if I understood, sorry, Bernhard, you go.
Just to add to that, I guess as well as the question has been raised as well before around geopolitics and what impact this has, focusing on something like that would allow this industry here to have access towards the whole world market. And that's a big opportunity as well.
And maybe to summarize what I understood from the discussion before, all the different organizations aim to work on, if you talk in architecture, what's happening between operating system and below the application software, to standardize on these things, to make it integrative, etc., but explicitly not work on application software, because that's probably something where the members of all of the organizations believe that it's a good idea not to work in open source, but to do proprietary stuff because they believe they have some IP. So I would, coming back to the question you have, saying Waymo would probably not be interested in open sourcing their AD algorithms in how to drive their self-driving robotaxis, but maybe is interested in standardizing the stuff beneath.
I think just to respond on that one, I think the trouble is, if you want to certify the Waymo framework, I think as soon as they claim it's modular, I would guess they come to you in order to see how to make it modular, which of the modular components can be certified as quickly as possible, relying on your experience. So I was wondering, how far it is going, but at the moment there's no discussion on that. Well, thank you.
Any other questions? I think we still have time for, depends on your discussion willingness, one or two.
Here.
One we have.
Okay, I try one. If we talk about, let's say, production cars, okay, and introducing the software stack into production cars, in my opinion, the traditional OEMs are under cost pressure, okay, and in my opinion, in my experience working on SOPs, it's what people call integration hell, let's say 2/3 of the project, and I think there's a huge potential of lowering costs, okay, yes. And I think it's also a good opportunity providing arguments to OEMs, introducing open source, showing them not only software stacks, but practices, right? And maybe, it's maybe a kind of consulting, but do you have ideas of cooperating, collaborating, and on those actions, showing maybe managers how they can save real costs and do stuff? I hope you get the question.
Yes, I think we got. So absolutely, and it's integration hell is a problem, and it's not just about saving costs, but also about faster time to market. Yeah, especially looking at the global competition, how can we make sure we deliver and develop cars faster, and then the integration is an issue what sometimes delays cars SOP. So definitely, and as said before, open source, there are many great practices how you can develop, build, and continuously deliver software, CI/CD as a term, or software factories, and that needs to come along. So we cannot talk about a reference stack or software architecture, we also need to talk about the processes. And now also closing the link to what we discussed before, the small challenges, we also have to make safety compliance, yeah? And roughly, give or take, 15 to 20% of the overall development effort for safety critical software is writing code. The rest is requirements, tests, all the administrative stuff. And here is a huge potential for improvement, also taking Gen AI into account, simplifying requirements analysis, test analysis, creating test cases for the code or requirements. So this is an area, in addition to learning and applying modern software principles, so that you have daily builds, releases, daily tests of the software, not this big integration bang. Okay? So this is one of the things that we need to change, coming from this like 3 months, 6 months, big bang integration schedules, to have continuously the latest bits of software deployed in your vehicle every time. Yeah? In our company, we call it code to road in 1 day. So a software change needs to be tested in the vehicle daily or on a weekly basis. And that's one of the paradigm changes that the automotive industry can learn from open source. And the message has been heard. Not everybody can easily apply it everywhere, but the message has been heard and understood.
I just want to make it clear. So all these organizations are member-driven. So there are not thousands of developers developing stuff which the OEMs then can use for free to solve this integration issue. So we are depending on the contributions. And that's, of course, also the OEMs need to bring in their experience of past integrations to make it better in a collaborative manner.
So it seems to be like a chicken and egg problem, right? Because the OEMs, they maybe think it's, no OEM here, I am maybe smaller supplier than you, and I am digital, I know how it works. And my point is that if you say managers, you can save costs, so they listen, and maybe they change.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like two or three aspects of what you said. So first of all, one of the ideas of the SOAFEE from an architecture perspective is, of course, that you use as well the cloud, first of all, to extend the compute capabilities that you'll have. I mean, if something is not real-time in a context and functional safety, you can use the cloud as well as an extension of the compute, of course. Another big thing is, Martin mentioned a shift left, so that will that we try to get earlier towards a hardened software. I would like to add as well towards the stretch right, because at the end, the goal for us must be as well to maintain a software stack for a dedicated car model for 10 years. And doing so, given the complexity of the software, purely only in hardware moving forward will not be a solution. And that leads then towards the last aspect, one of the key innovations that we currently see, which we try to address with software, especially at ARM, is this the virtual prototyping, and potentially as well, our USP currently is the compute parity, but it's clearly that the industry needs to move to harden and integrate the software in the cloud and then map it towards the car as much as possible.
So integration hell, I think, is real. That's also one of the motivations why we started the SDV Alliance. Because at the end of the day, no developer gives a shit if the stuff is coming from COVESA or Eclipse or from AUTOSAR or from SOAFEE. But the things have to work together, right? So we want to define in a vision and strategy workstream kind of a technical landscape what the SDV is composed of. And then we want to create some mid-term demonstrators, we call it, to show that these technologies work together based on these consortia. What we have today, what was shown by Ansgar, we call, to light the mood a bit, we call it Frankenstein demonstrators, because we're just stitching together what exists. But this is not where we need to head to. We need to solve the integration nightmare for the OEMs and for the industry to a certain degree with such initiatives. And this is why we are here, why we're sitting here, and why we're having this panel.
Such a nice way of summing up the entire discussion. Michael, thank you, and thanks for the question. You have been a wonderful audience, having many questions. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks for the 4 panelists. I need to hand over back to Sarah because we are already behind the schedule, I guess. So thank you very much to all the 4, to all of you. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Great. I actually have nothing to tell